The wheel spinning, and we got 4 check marks here. We got to get one more up before we're officially live. So spinning wheel on that last one, and still spinning. There we go, and we're off. Good morning, guys. Welcome into Draft Morning's Eve. I guess this
Draft
is
Eve. Draft Eve for sure.
This is Broncos for breakfast. I see John is coming in right now. Welcome, good guys, to happy Wednesday morning, Broncos for breakfast. You guys can find us on Twitter. I am Nick Kendell MHH. You can find Scott on Twitter at Scout Kennedy. Also, guys, do us a big favor. Go to Scott's YouTube page at youtube.com/C/Scott Kennedy. He's dropping a bunch of good stuff. And our topic today will also be in there. Well, I'm sure. To also make sure you guys follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Mile High Huddle. It can help us a heck of a lot. Go to huddleuppod.com, get your swag on. And most important thing, guys, subscribe, like, and share if you're joining us on YouTube. Click those thumbs up or heart react if you're joining us via Facebook. And drop a question. Obviously, we appreciate the super chats. If you guys do that, we will 100% get to your super chats. But if you don't, we're still going to have a good time. We're still going to get to your questions. So we got Rickard Bohr coming in. Good morning, country, from Amsterdam, the Netherlands. Man, have you been to Amsterdam, Scott?
I have not. I've been to a bunch of places in Europe, but I have not been to Amsterdam.
Absolutely one of the funnest places I have ever been. I had a good time. I think they say chased that green ferry. Had a little bit too much absinthe, but I mean, if you're going to be in Amsterdam, why not?
Yeah, when in Amsterdam, get loaded.
Exactly. We got Don Beauchamp coming in here, or Boku maybe. Good morning, Broncos country. Thank you very much, Don. From Albine, Texas, a little down
Abilene,
south.
Jesus, come on! These West Coast guy, if it's east of Colorado, let the Southerner handle the pronunciation.
That sounds fair. Sounds fair. I'll take the Native American names in the Midwest. We got Cam Wirtz coming in here. Good morning, Broncos country. Glad to be here. Also, to be fair, it's 11 o'clock your time, 10 o'clock your time. I am just grinding right now.
yeah, that's definitely fair. Definitely fair.
We got Don coming back in. Not sure about you all, but I can't wait to have the Broncos first pick over and done with. It's stressing me out. I feel like it's dragging. I'm so excited for it. I'm very thankful for the draft because it's provided both of us a platform that we otherwise wouldn't have. But man, it's drug out this year. It's probably part of the state of the world and social media, but I'm so ready for it to get here. We got Jeremy Sean coming in, Mr. Kirk Cousins lookalike himself. One more day. How you doing there, Kirk? Cam Wirtz, sorry I missed a pod yesterday. Had school, but glad to be here today. Well, you know what? I was going to say school's important. You're talking to a master's student here. School's important, but football's more important. I mean, I definitely would sit there in the back of the class and just be crafting out mock draft after mock draft after mock draft.
If you're good enough at sports, you don't ever have to worry about school.
Okay, Cardale Jones. You don't go to school for no football. So we're going to talk a little bit of Justin Fields today. Really interesting stuff coming out over the last 24, 48, 72 hours. I guess it kind of started with Chris Sims ranking him late. And then yesterday, I don't know if you saw Chris Sims put Justin Fields as his 32nd overall pick in the draft. But now there's a little bit coming out. Benjamin Albright, Broncos insider to NFL insider, but Broncos related, saying that there are some concerns with Justin Fields that might push him down the board. And I think he's hinting, he's not saying specifically, he's vaguely hinting that it does not have to do with his epilepsy diagnosis. So you and I are both in agreement. Justin Fields' tape is pretty darn special. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you'd put him up against Joe Burrow last year, but he has better traits than Joe Burrow, I think. I mean, he was phenomenal in 2019. He only got better this year, despite some bad games still. I don't know. It just does not make sense to me. We got Mark Rich coming in here. We got Bass Fishing Fuels coming in here. Man, I need to get out fishing. I really miss that. Also, I see Bawano dropped it in here. John dropped it in the chat. Make sure you guys click on this link as well. youtube.com/C/Scott with the sub. So get that going. So what do you think? Justin Fields, it just doesn't add up. I don't know what to think.
No, and I said at some point, I wrote about it today. I dropped a link in there on All Falcons just saying, he's an elite prospect and you got to trust your evaluations because you're going to hear more bluffing and bullshit. And I did go that already, but that you're going to hear more of that than you are in a poker game. This isn't voting. This isn't ranking. This is who can I get to my team.
Mhm.
And if you're drafting and you really like somebody, you hope they tank.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like I don't know how many of y'all have done Little League baseball, but when you send your son out there and you're coaching, you're like, buddy, go out there and just be awful so I can get you with an 8th round pick. And can I use my 1st round on over there? And they absolutely do that. Well, this is $1 billion of businesses. You don't think they're going to float some stuff out there that could be wrong? So what I say all along is, you can't believe everything you hear. You can't believe hardly anything you hear. We will find out exactly what at least one general manager thinks of him tomorrow. Because if he goes 3, 4, or 5, we're not going to get a chance to find out what everybody else thinks because he's already off the board. But we'll know that somebody thought he was worth a high pick. If he falls to 32, then we'll know something was wrong, because then every team had a chance to pass on him. I'm not buying it. I'm not. I don't think there's any way he goes out of the top 10. No way. I'm glad that they're not doing the draft. There's nothing more cringy to me than watching the guy that was invited to the draft sit there and not get picked. It's enough for me to just turn it off. I don't want to watch that.
Yeah, and I have strong feelings about Justin Fields' ability and play on the field. I think he is a pretty darn special prospect. But I come back to it. It feels similar to 2 situations which on the field went 2 different drastic ways, and 2 quarterbacks that I liked a lot coming out. Deshaun Watson, obviously, he fell to the 12th pick. I mean, he had that amazing game against Alabama, a good career, but people, I guess, overvaluing the radar gun at the combine. I don't know why he fell like that. I mean, Mitch Trubisky going number 2 with Watson going 12. Explain it to me. I don't get it.
That's it. Deshaun Watson does not have that rocket arm, and that's it. And when you're drafting that high, you're looking for something elite, and that's hard to measure in quarterbacks. You can see a guy that can throw it 70 yards or throw it on a dime, and that's what they start measuring, but they don't measure the intangibles, the toughness, the leadership, and all that stuff. It's immeasurable. So, and that's what made Deshaun Watson so good. The first time I was on the Mile High Huddle podcast, I talked about him. I was like, he's the first high school quarterback I ever saw that was allowed to call his own plays at the line of scrimmage. He ran his own offense. He's the smartest quarterback I've ever scouted. And for on the field stuff, I mentioned Jay Cutler was the dumbest smart guy I ever watched. Well, Deshaun Watson was the exact opposite. Physically speaking, if I'm watching these 2 guys side by side in a camp setting, I'm probably going to take Jay Cutler. If I watch 12 football games, it's not even close.
Yeah.
So, and that's the part with Deshaun, and he fell a little bit, which is what, either we're learning our lesson with Mac Jones, because he's got all those same traits, because Deshaun can run, but he's not a runner. He was never a runner. He doesn't want to run. He wants to pass. Mac wants to pass. He'll move around, but he is a thrower first. So are we learning our lesson with Mac Jones, or did we overspend thinking that not enough people have learned their lessons and we could have gotten them a little bit farther down? That's where I'm leaning. I think no matter what, they probably overspent on that. And he could turn out to be a Hall of Famer, but you could have had him a little bit farther down the line. Yeah. And not given up 3 picks and been able to help him more. That by surrounding him with more good players.
It's the value game, right? And also, you bring a good point. It's BS season. I don't know if you've ever been a fantasy football manager or anything like that, or done a live draft. You're like sitting there, oh man, AJ Green had that hammy last year. I don't know if I would touch him in the first round, and you're sitting there with the first pick in the second round. It's like, oh man, that'd be unfortunate if somebody took him early. So it is that type of year.
The dad's a real pain in the ass. You don't want that kid on your team. He's terrible. It's awful. So yes, 100%. Yes. I'm very familiar with it, and working in recruiting, it's almost the exact opposite. It's real easy. This kid can't play. Is translated to we're not going to get him. Mm-hmm. This is the best player I've ever seen. Translates to we are going to get him. So you got to throw all that out. Trust your evaluation. And for me, Justin Fields is the number 2 guy on the board. Flat out. Yeah. Number 2. Me too. Number 2 guy on the board.
And I do factor in positional rankings, but even if I don't think I did, he probably still might be number 2. I think he's that good. And I think Justin Fields could be compared to Russell Wilson. They're both greedy in the pocket. They both like to push the ball vertically. I think Russell Wilson has a nicer compact release, but Fields' release swap may be a little bit elongated. It's still not like duration-wise, it doesn't take super long. It's a whip. He gets the ball out.
And from a size standpoint, it's a big difference.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson, when he came out of high school, we loved Russell Wilson, but we moved him down in the rankings because, what good is having a kid in your draft class in your recruiting class that you're not going to get. He was an elite baseball prospect. I'm like 5'11" quarterbacks who are elite baseball prospects. They go and play baseball. Well, learned a lesson on that one and put 5 stars on Kyler Murray. So, Russell Wilson is, he's small. Justin Fields has all of the tools. I mean, he's got them. Like when we were talking about comps, I'm like, Andrew Luck, that's a similar type of guy with the athleticism, the arm strength, the toughness. He's got all of it. So we'll see. Unless there's something in there that we don't know about, and if like I said, we'll find out. We will find out tomorrow night. We'll find out tomorrow night exactly what at least one NFL general manager thinks of him.
Yeah, and I want to put on all of them. And I want to put on the tinfoil hats for a little bit. Maybe some angles there. You talk about teams getting into fall. Maybe there's some other stuff there out there too. I want to press on you because it's really been on my mind because it just doesn't add up with what I see in reality. So we got Brandon coming in here. Thank you very much, Brandon, doing the blue steel look there in that YouTube picture. Put it on this molder. Albright did talk about it a little bit. He said he's a me versus the world mentality and how he pays way too much. How he pays way too much attention to social media and what people say about him as it affects him. He has burners, so on and so forth. So, I mean, I know Bronco players that look their name up on social media constantly and will jump on things if anybody says anything negative against them. My
answer to that is so. When we were in camps, we called all the quarterbacks as a group. We called them prima donnas. It was hilarious. Yeah. My offensive coordinator would be like, linebackers over there, defensive backs over there, prima donnas, you're with me.
The pretty boys.
So, and that's a me against the world mentality at this stage, after leaving his home state. And that was one of the problems, being called, that he's not tough enough, doesn't want to compete and all this stuff at Georgia and leaving there. If he used that as fuel to do what he did at Ohio State, did it affect his play? If it did, in a very positive manner. So if that's all you got, I ain't worried, and neither will 31 general managers.
Yeah, and thank you, Chad. Well, hello to you in North Dakota. Hopefully, maybe we might be getting a quarterback from your neck of the woods up there. We'll see. So putting on the tinfoil hat real quick. You said something that I thought was interesting, and it's something that I picked up a little bit up on that I think it does make sense. Now, I think it's somebody speculating, but it does make sense. What do you think it's the possibility of a Georgia staff potentially bad-mouthing Justin Fields a little bit after everything happened there? I mean, I would be a little bit bitter having to watch Jake Fromm and JT Daniels and then watching Justin Fields on one side. I think it's something that my understanding is Kirby Smart's staff has had before, some bad-mouthing some guys on the way out. So do you think there's any legs there? I know you are down in that neck of the woods, so I won't hold anything too much against you.
I don't think that would be that big of an effect. I think if Kirby Smart is incredibly honest, if he might tell you, listen, he came in here, we told him what we wanted, that wasn't going to be good enough for him, and he left. Draw your own conclusions. That's facts.
Yep.
That's facts. Again, he's not the first player to transfer, won't be the last.
Yeah.
Cam Newton certainly had bigger issues in high school than coming out of Florida, than going to junior college and coming back to Auburn than Justin Fields did. And Cam was number 1 overall pick. So again, all of it is I haven't heard anything yet that makes me think that from all right, maybe to 10, maybe he falls down a couple, depending on how these trades work out. But after that, no, even if you don't need a quarterback at 11, you take this kid. So I don't think he lasts. I don't think he lasts at 10.
Yeah, that's. I think the Patriots are going to jump up for him. If the Broncos don't jump up for him, I think the Patriots are going to jump up for him at 7 or 8.
In my mock with no trades that we did the other day, we did on Monday, I had him 8 to the Panthers. Mm-hmm. And then Trey Lance at 9 to the Broncos, and that was with no trades. Now you cannot count on no trades, because but it is expensive, and we're getting to the point. We've seen the price it comes in to jump up into the top 5 and get a quarterback. Now, as we get closer to the draft, does that price go up as you start getting locked in? If I'm the Atlanta Falcons and I've got my guy, I'm locked in on Kyle Pitts. That's my guy. You're gonna have to knock me off of there, or does the price come down? Because I've been trying to get that big high price. And now I need to discount it a little bit. There's 2 ways to think of it. So But I think someone will come up and try and get him. I don't think you can wait until 8 or 9 to get your quarterback. But we'll see. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun first half of the draft. After that, I might tune out.
Yeah. Well, don't tune out because we're going to be back here Friday morning. And also the Broncos might trade down. We have a Diamond Rattler coming in here who I love Diamond. We've gone back and forth a few times, but he brings it, and I appreciate that. Saying we ain't drafting at 9, we moving back most likely to the late teens. And then he said Justin Simmons even said on his Twitch stream that he heard we were trying to make a move back in the draft. Another player said they thought they were going to go up for a quarterback. So those guys are speculating. I mean, I think there's a good chance the Broncos move back from 9. They would like to move back from 9 if the board doesn't fall a certain way. But there's also a chance that they don't get a deal they like offered to them at 9, and they have to sit there and take a guy. So we'll see what happens. We will see what happens. But I wanted to get to that question there it was Malcolm Brown. Here we go. Why have the last 5 Ohio State quarterbacks been so blah? And I'm going to put this one over to you, Scott. I have strong opinions on this. We'll call it a trope, where a guy goes to school determines what kind of player he can be in the NFL. So what are your thoughts on this comment?
Part of it is look at the type of offenses they were running to be successful. Terrell Pryor is one of those guys who was never going to be a quarterback, but was a successful college quarterback because Urban Meyer wanted his quarterbacks to run first. They were their best running backs. Tim Tebow, one of the best college football players of all time, flat out. Look at his numbers. Look at his trophy case. He's one of the best college football players ever. He wasn't a pro quarterback. No offense, but he wasn't a top 10 type of pick franchise quarterback. He was he was a fullback playing quarterback and could throw the ball when he needed to. So to me, part of that's the offense. They were very successful. They want a run first guy who can throw. That doesn't work in the NFL. You got to have a thrower first, and if he can run, great. But you got to have a passer first, and it's just a bonus if you can. So that's the big part of it. JT Barrett, he had some questions on this. By far, Justin Fields is the best passer that they've had in the last decade and a half. By far, it's not even close. So it's an entirely different animal there.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You're talking to a guy who went to the same college as Ken Anderson back in the day, but throwing it around for the Cincinnati Bengals, and talk about a small school. If you can play, you can play, especially at the quarterback position. Hitting tight windows is hitting tight windows. People like say Trey Lance, he had open guys, but also he doesn't have those incredible athletes that are adjusting for footballs 30 to 40 yards down the field like these other schools do. So traits translate. I mean, Donovan McNabb went to Syracuse. How many other good quarterbacks have there been from Syracuse? Oregon, Justin Herbert came out. What did the Oregon quarterbacks do before Justin Herbert? Achilles Smith, Joey Harrington, Marcus Mariota, et cetera, et cetera. Justin Herbert looks like a phenom. Granted, 1 year. We'll see, but it doesn't matter. There wasn't even a single.
It's a small sample size. But once with quarterbacks, once you have 1 good year, they'll give you 3 more.
Yeah, that's true. And another one I wanted to get to here, and there's a little bit of nuance in here because the conference went from the Big 8 to the Big 12. But before Patrick Mahomes, there was not a single quarterback from the Big 12 that had won an NFL playoff game. I don't care. Talent is talent. Watch the guy. You can see if he has it or not. And obviously, it's still somewhat of a crapshoot, but it's about the traits, the tools, as well as the drive and the intelligence. And it doesn't matter what helmet you wear. As the cliche goes, scout the name, not the helmet. Scout the jersey, not the helmet. Because quarterbacks, they change out. There's not a quarterback you. It's not even as a Hawkeye fan, there's not a tight end you. It comes down to that individual player. So,
and shoot, until 15 years ago, the Big 8, Big 12 was a wishbone conference. That was a running conference. Jamel Holloway. I bet if we're running wishbones in NFL, I'll take Jamel Holloway, Tommy Frazier. I'll take those guys on my team. Tommy Frazier is one of the best college football players of all time. But those guys don't fit. It's a different level. It's a different game.
Yeah. So let's address this comment. Chris isn't buying it. He is saying that we are not telling the truth, or he doesn't share our opinion with Justin Fields. He says nothing has changed with Fields. So he's saying, I guess in general over the years, poor throwing motion, bad under pressure, medical concerns. He played for OSU. It's a nonsense pick. So anything here you want to address? Obviously, Chris, we appreciate that you have a different opinion.
Yeah, that's fine. Yes. Like I said yesterday on the thing is, when when I'd get railed for where I'd rank players, it's like, let me be wrong before you tell me I'm wrong. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong, but I'll go across those 4 points and say, disagree, 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 don't care. So, I think he's got a great throwing motion, a fantastic arm. He's mobile as hell, great frame. He's terrific under pressure. He's tough as nails. I saw that in the Clemson game. The production is there. He's incredibly accurate. Just look at his percentages. And he's incredibly accurate while throwing the least amount of screen passes of any of these other guys by a factor of about 75%. So he's getting the ball downfield. I disagree on those. So, but that's okay. Doesn't mean I'm right. It doesn't make me right. So it's up to them to say, I'll let you know what I think, what I see, and then you take that information, go listen to some other people, and then find out who you can trust. But no matter who, even if I'm right, I'm still going to be wrong half the time anyway. Everybody else is. But find somebody that you think is giving you an honest take, is smart about it, and checks their ego behind them. Because I'll tell you I'm going to be wrong, absolutely, and I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong because you're not. He could absolutely be a bust. I just disagree with those points.
Yep, it's about the process versus the results. If you have good process, more often than not, it's going to lead to good results. But there are no guarantees, especially in the NFL draft. So we got Jan Cruz coming in here. If either Fields, Mack, or Lance falls to 9, who is set to thrive under the Shurmur scheme? So this is an interesting question, and I'm going to pivot off this one just a little bit. We talked about it before. What is the average lifespan of an offensive coordinator in the NFL?
2 years.
2 years? 2.5 years? You do want to draft guys that are somewhat scheme fits, but if you're drafting a quarterback, that is a decade to 15 long decision. So you want to get the best guy possible, and then it is up to that offensive coordinator to adjust the scheme to that player. And granted, a lot of people like to dunk on Shurmur for the Broncos last year, but he really did adjust his scheme down the stretch last year, and the Broncos offense improved because of it. They had to dial back some of the terminology and the full field reads from Drew Lock because he was having a hard time picking up the mental aspect of the game per multiple reports. Even the most ardent supporters have said he's Drew Lock. It's not for lack of trying. He's just not a quick learner. So they dialed that back and the offense got better. More 2 tight end sets, more under center. Not exactly what Shurmur wants to do, but he did it. So as far as the actual scheme, I think Mack or Fields actually do fit better because it's more 11 personnel, more shotgun, more distributing the ball quickly underneath, where Lance is going to have a higher ADOT. He's going to try to push the ball vertically. You're looking more of like a Cam Newton rookie year offense, which, hey guys, that's the Broncos quarterback coaches was Cam Newton's offensive coordinator for his rookie of the year season, as well as his MVP season. So they have options there. But really, offensive coordinators, and this is my understanding, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but offensive coordinators every offseason, they look at what their personnel is, and then they're like, okay, this is kind of what we're going to highlight. This is what we think is going to work based on our personnel. We will change the scheme or manipulate the scheme based on the type of players that we have, so that way we put them in the best position to succeed.
Yeah, and you'd hope so. Some of these guys are married to their schemes. I grew up with the run and shoot here in Atlanta in the 90s. And June Jones was going to live or die with that run or shoot. Didn't matter who he had or what kind of success he had. So, some of those guys make their name on that scheme, and that's where they're going to be, and they're not going to be there long. The successful guys are going to make the adjustments based on the available personnel. And this is what we talked a little bit about, last week, talking about general managers are drafting for the franchise. Coaches are going to draft for their schemes and try and win now, because, as you said, the coaches aren't going to be there nearly as long. In theory, a general manager should be there 10, 15, 20 years. He's thinking for 10, 15, 20 years, at least 5. Whereas, coaches are typically going to think, I need this guy right now to plug this hole. They're not thinking 2 years down the line, because, by God, if I go 4-12, I'm not going to be here anyway.
Yeah, no, good point. We got Rickard Bohr coming in here. Would it be easier to trade back this year? There are only 650 players who declared, and thus teams might value the year's late round picks less and could be more eager to get up in the draft. That's a good point, Rickard, but I would also shift that to say that the UDFA pool is going to be far more slim pickings, and a lot of teams value those UDFA guys for camp, for special teams, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's more lottery tickets, as George Payton would say, even with those UDFA guys. So maybe you're going to see teams that are even more hesitant to give up the quantity of picks because you need those guys to fill out the rest of your roster. But it's a good point, especially in that like a 5th round pick could equal a 7th round pick in some seasons, just because of the lower value.
And I think it just depends on I think the depth is there. Anything, when we're talking about draft picks, anything after 300 doesn't matter anyway.
Yeah.
So smart. So, there's still twice as many players that have declared or are eligible. And we can get into how stupid I think that is. And I wish they all did it like baseball, where everybody's eligible. And it's up to the billion-dollar industry to convince the poor broke kid to come out and give up his college eligibility, than for him to give up and say, well, maybe you want me. But that we can have that discussion later.
Yeah.
But I wish everybody did it like baseball. But there's twice as many players in the draft as that will be drafted. So I don't think that's really a big factor.
All right. We got Chad Eric coming in from North Dakota. Thoughts on Jordan Love? Would you swap first rounders with the Packers and get Love? I'll leave the thoughts on Jordan Love here for Scott real quick, but you're talking about moving from 9 to 30 to get Jordan Love. That's a huge drop. I mean, no, the answer for that trade package, no. I think there is something to taking a shot and accumulating toolsy quarterbacks, even though it's kind of like the Packers trading for Deshaun Kaiser. Like, odds are he's not going to hit, but we took a shot, right? But
Deshaun Kaiser was terrible.
Yeah, Deshaun Kaiser
he was terrible. I couldn't believe he was getting talked up that much. It's like, is this the Notre Dame thing? I'm like, I'm sorry. You see some of this stuff, and it's just like, no, what are you watching? I mean, Chris P. We want to talk about bad motions. Go watch Deshaun Kaiser. He was an option quarterback in high school.
Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts on Jordan Love? It's really weird because he hasn't played at all, and it does seem like somebody just threw out the rumor that, hey, maybe the Packers could move him, and nobody's really shot it down, right? Like it's like grown legs since the rumor has come out.
I don't know how good he is, honestly.
Yeah.
So if he's worth a first round pick, then yeah, you take that. And you start thinking about, it hits me. It's like, boy, it'd be nice to get back at the Packers for this, because it was the Falcons who traded Brett Favre to the Packers for a first round pick. Yeah. And I say, you can stump all your Falcons friends by saying, who did the Falcons take with that pick they got from Brett Favre? Nobody knows. They might now, because I actually put it in a video that's gotten a couple thousand views, but nobody knew before. So, if you can get a guy that you think can be a starter, then yeah, you can make that. You got to trust your evaluators on that. And I wouldn't trust what I have to say on that, because I don't know enough about him. I haven't seen him play enough.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Utah State, right? Just has tools, has arm talent, but there's not enough volume there. And we didn't even see him in preseason this year. So what are we going off of? APC coming in here saying for the Broncos at pick number 9, Parsons, Sewell, or Slater. So APC, thank you very much for the comment. Scott, you and I disagree on Parsons, not from the on-field product, but just for the risk assessment with him and where you would take a shot because of that. But these are 3 names that I think make sense for the Broncos if they stay at 9, because George Paton said just the other day that if you are picking at 9, you want to take a guy who is going to be playing a good amount of snaps this year. Now, I think that's him hinting at a trade back, because that way he could look at it more holistically and think more about 2022 needs and beyond. But if sticking at 9, I think these are the 3 non-quarterbacks that make the sense for where the Broncos roster is at right now.
Well, and we might disagree on Parsons, but I don't think we disagree on the order that we take these guys at 9. For me, it's Penei Sewell in every time. Every single time. So I go Sewell. Even if you're solid on the offensive line, this guy should be an All-Pro. I mean, he really should. I think this guy grades as a number 1 overall in a lot of drafts.
Wow.
If you can get him at 9, it's the steal of a lifetime. So I'd go Sewell, and then I might think about needs a little bit more, because I think Slater and Parsons. And again, you can always use an offensive tackle. Always, if you can upgrade at the offensive tackle position in the draft, do it. It makes sense. Parsons, I think, falls into that best available player category. I really do. And he can play all 3 downs on defense. And if you've got a 250-pound 4-4 guy in the middle of your defense just got better. Period. And so. That's not a bad way to go. That's not a bad way to go there. So, again, said this before. Hopefully, we got some new viewers coming in. So, you're not hearing. Scott, you said this every day. Well, I have said this every day. If you're drafting in the top 10, you're either going to get your quarterback of the future, that you can have hopeful for, or you're going to get an elite prospect. All 3 of those guys are elite. And I have Slater just a little bit farther down than Sewell and Parsons, but Parsons and Sewell, they're elite players and prospects. They're impact guys right away. So It should be. You should be happy. It's going to be happy. Even it's going to be hard to screw up a top 10 pick in this draft.
Yeah,
Unless
and
you're going
we
to trade
actually
3 picks to get a guy that is a question mark.
And Carl and I last night on building the Broncos did a grading the scenarios, and I had the Broncos getting okay grades for taking Slater or Sewell at 9, but it's just because I think the Broncos either need to get the quarterback or they need to put themselves in position to trade back for a quarterback. So I would grade those scenarios better than sticking at 9. Although Sewell falling to 9, I would have. Although I've heard the Broncos have Slater higher, I don't know. But Sewell falling to 9, I would be fine with that. I'm like, oh, where does he play? I don't care. He's going to get on the field. The only guy I have penned in for the Broncos and Sharpie is Garrett Bowles at left tackle. Sewell can play either guard spot year one. Laramie Tunsil played guard, and he's one of the best tackles in football right now. Or he can play right tackle. You're going to get the best 5 out there. That's what's important when you're putting together an offensive line. So does that mean that Juwan James and his huge contract is on the bench? Fine. I don't care. You've already paid him. Does that mean that Graham Glasgow has to kick to center because he's a better center option than Cushenberry, and then Sewell is playing right guard year one? Fine. I don't care. I'm going to get that guy on the field because he is a difference maker. Same with Slater. I'm going to get one of those guys on the field and the best 5 play that makes sense. That's what it's about when you come in for the offensive line. You need 5 good guys. You need no weaknesses. Best holistic 5 on the field. So we got Cody coming in here. We had a couple questions here with Ojulari. Did Ojulari have bad medical news yesterday? I don't know if you picked up wind of this, Scott, but I've heard that knee was concerned for Ojulari long term, and that to the point where he might even fall to day 3, which is sad.
There's nothing that anybody's been willing to put on record about it.
Yeah,
there's no one's willing to go out and say, yeah, this is happening. My concern on him was when we were talking about when we brought him up to begin with was he's smallish, so he's definitely going to play a linebacker or a specialized edge rusher. He's 245 pounds. He's smaller than Micah Parsons. So this is your defensive end. Well, I'll take Micah Parsons, and if I need a pass rusher, I'll just put his hand in the dirt a few times. So I haven't heard that. And doing a quick search, nobody is willing to come out and put that on record. So hopefully he'll be okay. Hopefully be okay. What I really like about him, and we've got if you look at one of my first live streams with Brooks Austin, the Georgia draft picks, we talk about him. He uses his hands so well. So he rushes the passer like an MMA fighter, and using your hands is so important. He's got those big slap moves, the hooks, the swims, and everything. He uses his hands tremendously well. That he's really, really improved because he's one of those guys. Again, he's fairly late to the game, but that can happen. It's an athlete sport. It's not a skill sport. You don't hear about shortstops that started play, their junior year in high school. That happens all the time. Oh yeah, I quit the basketball team and went out for football my sophomore year in college, and now I'm a first-round pick. That doesn't happen in other sports.
Jason Oweh.
Yeah, it doesn't happen in other sports. But football is a bigger, faster, stronger game, and he's got a lot of tools. He's a little bit on the smaller side.
And we got BX Broncos saying an interesting point here. He's the same size as Von Miller, though.
Mm-hmm. Did Von play on the edge? Was he defensive end?
He did a lot of edge work for Texas A&M coming out, but Von had unbelievable ankle flexion and much more power behind him and more diverse usage. I mean, Ojulari, one of the best crop chops in this class. He probably has the single best move. Doesn't have as many counters right now, but that cross chop, that'll work in the NFL. But I mean, Von Miller was different, right? Like Von Miller tested like 95th, 99th percentile, and nobody had the burst or bend like Von. I mean,
he was significantly farther ahead as a football player. Yes. If I was going to compare somebody to him, I'd go Micah Parsons as that comparison before I'd go Ojulari.
Mm-hmm.
Ojulari's kind of a specialist at this point at defensive end. He hadn't played any linebacker. Can he? And can he play end at 245 pounds? He'll get bigger, but to me, those are the question marks that push you down from let's talk about an elite pass rusher in the top 15 to back end of the first round where you're talking about more risks. And that's where all the edge guys are. There's a lot of good edge rushers in this draft. There's never a sure thing. I hate saying there's no sure
blue
thing.
Chips. There's no blue chips.
But there's guys that have flags right next to them that push them down a little farther. Every one of the guys has a flag next to them.
Yep. Good point here. We got Jay Boss coming in. I love this morning show. This is definitely a good idea, and you guys should keep it going. Well, if we're going to keep the lights on in here, boys, we're going to need some super chats. So let's keep it going here. Otherwise, Chad's going to be like, yeah, you know what? I don't want to wake up early to make your stream. But I appreciate that. Also, Dylan's coming in saying, hit that like button, y'all. We'd appreciate that as well. To see the difference in explosion, you would have to do a 20-yard dash explosion. I mean, it's that 10-yard split, right? As well as if you're looking for the explosive metrics, it's the jumps. That's why I've listened to Tristan Wirfs, the vertical and the broad. If you're looking for explosiveness, those are the metrics to look at.
Throw the 40 out the window. Look at the shuttle. Look at the L cone. Look at the broad jump. Look at the vertical. They're all there. Everybody just focuses on the 40, and you can train up. You can drop 0.4 of a second on your 40 with good technique. There's the more highly affluent areas in Georgia. There's almost 200 kids signed Division I scholarships in football in the state of Georgia. It's like if you go to Gwinnett, if you don't like him now, you're never going to like him because they've been trained up for 5 or 6 years. Not a lot of upside down. Now, when I go down into Dade Broward and get a kid who's maybe eating 1 meal a day and chasing rabbits in Pahokee, when I get him and I can put 30 pounds on him, get him 3 squares a day, there's a lot more upside there. So the 40 to me it's fun. But when I'm looking for athletes, when I'm looking for potential, that's really the last one I look at. You show me an L cone 40 broad jump vertical in the elite status, I got a player. I got an athlete.
Yeah, and this is kind of an interesting tidbit, just a sidebar right now. Do you know what position has the highest correlation with a good 40 to NFL success? Does not make sense. I
was going to say, if it doesn't make sense, then I'm wrong. But for me, it'd probably be wide receiver, just because they're the ones that are most likely to be going in a straight line for the longest. So,
it's
in order to get open, you still need the lateral movement. So it's so important in every single position. You might even say offensive line on that, just because. Do they have a decent enough 40 to not be a fat slob?
Yeah. Yes, that's a good point. It actually is offensive line. I think offensive tackle specifically, how often are those guys running 40 yards down the field? I don't know, but interesting tidbit there. I mean, if you're looking for trends in the data.
If they can run 40 yards down the field, then they're in shape.
Yes, that's a good point.
Then they're fit, but again, there's so much more to look at it. I bet the guys that have the good 40s also have good L cone shuttles.
Other things too. Mm-hmm. And I think the 40 is definitely overrated, but I do really like that 10-yard split. I think that ability to how quickly you can get off and go forward, there is value to the 10-yard split. 40, I won't put that much weight on it, but 10-yard split all day.
Yeah, it's tougher to measure that, so that's why I've just come to rely on the L cone and the shuttles for that similar type of burst. So yes, I agree. The 40, like I said, if you take this out of context, you can make me sound like a complete idiot, but speed's overrated.
Yeah. Agility and short area quickness, I would say, is more important in football. Football happens in a phone booth. A lot of it does. So Mr. Westside coming in here with the Rick Sanchez picture there. Inside linebacker is way more important to us. So I think inside linebacker for the Broncos is pretty interesting how they are this season. Scott's more of a Falcons guy. I'm sure he has some takes on the guys the Broncos have. I'm sure you remember watching A.J. Johnson for Tennessee back in the day. A tackling machine there for the Volunteers, and Josie Jewell tackling machine. The Broncos could 100% use an athletic boost at the linebacker position, but it wasn't the linebackers last year that were the straw that broke the camel's back, right? In Vic Fangio's defense, he wants some athleticism, but more importantly, he needs guys who are not going to do reckless things and be undisciplined and leave that back seven vulnerable, because if one guy is out of position, the whole back seven, the integrity of that match quarters defense can implode. So you need to have guys who are not overreading things, putting themselves in bad position, and therefore putting the back seven in position. So Broncos could use an athletic boost at linebacker. I have no disagreement there, but I think that they're more likely to be okay there this season than meets the eye. And it's kind of like with the Bronco fans with the offensive line. Like, we need to upgrade the offensive line. Yes, that's true, but look around the league. Like, you don't really have, like, the Broncos have a better offensive line than, at least they had a better offensive line than the Chiefs. Now they have a better offensive line than the Chargers. They have a better offensive line than the Raiders. They're closer to league average than anything, but you have to take a 10,000-foot view on the landscape of the NFL in those positions. So a good point from the Nagulator there. The Nagulator, thank you for joining us this morning. I've seen you around these parts, and I can get that name right. So I appreciate that. One makes me laugh. Broncos do have 2 linebackers that are going to be free agents next year. So first round need, sure, they could take the swing there, but I think it's one where you definitely want to take a pick in those first 4 rounds. Doesn't have to be round 1, especially in this draft. I think this is a very good off-ball linebacker class. You can get a guy who can project as a future starter in 2022.
And if you, again, like you're saying, it's for the linebacker position similar to a running back position. You don't know, you can find value, but when you've got a star at the position, you know it. You know it. It's a difference maker. So if you can get a guy like that, and they've got certainly more longevity than a running back position. So there are guys there, but there's a couple special players in this group too. So again, if you want best player available, it might be a linebacker. The best drafts are when you can match best player available to a need, and if you can't do that, then you want to move back. That's kind of what I've said and why the number 4 pick can be available. The best player available might not fit a Falcons need at all. So they're shopping, they're absolutely shopping. There's a story out again today that they're still listening. They just haven't heard the right offer yet. So got about, 8 o'clock tomorrow, 36, about 34 hours, 33 hours till draft. So
we'll see what happens. That price is, we'll see if they're going to get any of those. We got Veach coming in, and I want to actually pivot this back to Parsons. Inside linebacker will help reduce yak. You can't stop elite tight end slot receivers from catching the football. And this is a good point from Veach. I feel like there is a misnomer out there that the Broncos specifically adding Micah Parsons means that they're going to be able to stop Travis Kelce and Darren Waller. I don't think there is stopping Darren Waller or Travis Kelce in today's NFL, especially with how those offenses are constructed. Those guys are going to get theirs. Now, the big thing is, can you limit the bleeding? And Parsons himself, he's not going to be a guy out there playing man coverage 30 yards down the field following a tight end. I mean, maybe eventually he could be, but that's not him right now. Right now, he's more of a chase and tackle guy. And Veach makes a good point here. It's not so much the man coverage areas that, or just the one-on-one coverage areas that Parsons will impact. He can impact a little bit there because he's an athlete and he's big. But it's more so when the ball gets out to the flat, when the ball gets quickly, he can put his head down and hunt, right? It's like a cheetah chasing a gazelle. He put on the boosters, close space quickly, and limit that. That's everyone. Oh, Devin White. Devin White's been a good linebacker, but where he makes his hay is when those balls are to the flats, dude is coming downhill in a hurry, and he's going to hurt that guy if the ball's late at all and limit the yak. So that's a good point. I think there's a misnomer that, oh man, if the Broncos don't take a linebacker, they're not going to be able to stop these tight ends. They're not going to use them to stop the tight ends purely. That's not how this scheme works. And it's more about adding athleticism. So that way, when the ball does get those high percentage, or the ball is thrown to those high percentage areas, you're limiting the chance for explosive plays because there's a lot of yak weapons in this division.
And the best way to stop a linebacker, a tight end, is to jam him. Is if you can keep him from getting a good release, and that's really hard with these guys that can bench press a piano. These tight ends are 265, 270 pounds. So again, it's almost to use a baseball analogy. I tell my kids, I'm like, it's okay if they get a single. Don't turn a single into a triple. Make sure you keep the ball in front of you, get the ball in. So they're going to get their catches. On these slip screens and all this kind of stuff. Just make your tackles. Which is so important. And if you can get a guy that can close down and make your open field tackles, and that's the reason why I prefer a guy like Patrick Surtain. When we're talking about the best player, I want a guy that's going to stop. I want the ball carrier to stop when my cornerback's out there on an island, and I think he's probably the best at that. Even if he might not be as good, but he's still damn good, as good in coverage as somebody else. I think I do like a good press and release, keep the ball in front of you, and limit the yards after catch. That's why I like Surtain as the number 1 corner in this class.
I was Caleb Farley truther just because rare movement skills, but the injury is concerning. Also the age. I mean, he's going to be 22, 23 this year. A little raw to the position still, but man, when he's healthy out there, there's nobody who moves like him in this class.
Well, and I can get into this. I take a shot at this every so often about Calvin Ridley. He's the Falcons wide receiver. They just picked up they're picking up his option 5th year. His first year, we talk about how important it is to have these guys under contract, 5th year option. In his first year of his second contract, he'll turn 29 years old. Double holdback, entered the league as a 23-year-old rookie, was a 21-year-old freshman at Alabama, and that matters. It does. I think you've gotten your value for what you've paid, but you've got to think about that as if you want to sign him to a second contract, because, someone like DeAndre Hopkins or Julio Jones are 24, 25 years old. This guy's going to be 29.
Yeah.
So it matters, especially
It
at quick twitch skill positions. It matters.
100%. Not every single position does it matter. I would say that the ones that it matters the least for is probably the offensive line, because a lot of those guys, it's such a technique-based position that you're seeing strength and technique, and that doesn't tend to and just body type. And that doesn't tend to, these guys aren't shrinking. I guess some of these offensive linemen, you see them after they're out of the league and they look like they've shrunk about 400 pounds. But the frame itself doesn't shrink. So those are positions where, like Garrett Bowles, a lot of people, he's 25 years old. I mean, obviously you'd prefer him be 21, but like offensive linemen can play 32, 33, 34, 35. I mean, Andrew Whitworth is 39 this year and he's still killing it. Trent Williams is good. Unless they have an injury. I mean, Ryan Clady, we saw it. They had that Liz Frank injury, and that was that. But that can happen at any position. But positions like running back, wide receiver, cornerback, safety, edge rusher, 30 years old, like that's when it's like danger zone, right? Like, oh, my guy's going to be 30 years old. Am I going to pay him a 4 or 5 year contract? Because they can drop off a cliff. So that's when you get yourself in a real danger zone.
The interior line is a grown man position. It's a grown man position. And when I was doing recruiting, I used to say a year is worth half a star. So we talk about these guys that are 4 and 5 star guys. Like, how does BYU beat USC with all these 5-star recruits? I'm like, because if you only have a guy for 3 years like Tyron Smith was just becoming to be the guy that we knew he could be when he left USC after 3 years.
Yeah.
He came in as a 245-pound offensive tackle. And, BYU's playing with 25-year-old men that are fifth-year seniors. Boise State, if I get a half a star on a 2-star guy and he's a fifth-year guy, well, he's 4.5 stars.
Yeah.
By the time it's men against boys in the trenches. So, yes, agree 100%. So you got to watch the age on those skill guys, and it matters a little bit. It does.
Yeah. And that's why this is kind of a deep cut here. I released my one and only 7-round mock draft. And I had the Broncos taking a guy who has a kind of a hot and cold motor on the defensive line, but a developmental guy, only 20 years old, Bobby Brown from Texas A&M. I'm not sure if he will be there. I think late 4, early 5, but 35-inch arm length, 20 years old, good burst, strong, powerful hands. And again, a defensive line, that is a developmental position. That guy's just starting to figure it out. So if I can get him 2 years in the system and then have him take over for Purcell 2 years from now as a nose tackle or one technique, that's playing the draft. That's perfect value. That's exactly what you want to do. So a young guy that is just kind of figuring it out. It doesn't always work out that way. I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you do, the Louisville defensive tackle that the Texans took. What was his name?
Louisville. No, for me,
I did that to you. Louisville.
I'm old enough that the guy I remember, I was just talking about him when I was talking about Azeez Ojulari. The two guys I remember was Dwight Freeney from Syracuse. And then now I can't remember his name, but he was a shorter guy that played for Louisville, and I think he ended up with the Ravens.
Elvis Dumerville.
Elvis Dumerville
for a long time.
was who I was thinking. That's who I compared when I was going to jump back a little bit, since you mentioned Louisville and defensive ends. We're talking about Azeez Ojulari. That was my comp for those guys. Was almost Elvis Dumerville and Dwight Freeney. Two pretty good players.
And the player I was talking about, the youngest player ever taken in the modern draft era, Amobi Okoye. So I remember him being pretty small, and everyone's like, oh, man, he's so young. He's got all this potential, and never really materialized in the NFL. So it doesn't always work, but draft picks don't always work in general. So this question here from Robert, I think is good because hello, Broncos. Hello, Falcons. The Broncos moving up to the 4th overall pick from 9. What kind of package would you expect from them to get up there? I don't think you're going to get that San Francisco sweetheart deal. 12-3 is different than 9-4, especially for the 4th quarterback in the draft. But it's going to be a haul. And what would you expect that kind of deal to be?
I think it's going to be at least 2 high-round picks, either a first and a second, a pair of seconds, or somewhere in there. But I think it's going to cost you at least 2 high-round picks to move up into that 4 spot. And that's just to get somebody to answer the phone. And Chris P, appreciate it. I was reading your comments here when you're seeing me look down like this. I'm not checking my phone. I'm reading through all the comments, and I was watching the back and forth on this where y'all were talking about quarterbacks. And no, there's no way that we're all going to agree. There's no way, because there's way too many variables and way too many factors. So I appreciate the conversation, appreciate the super as well. And, like I said, I'm going to check my ego out the door. I'm never going to say I'm right when trying to predict the future because I'll end up looking like a moron. And I do that enough on my own. And I'm not going to tell you your opinion's wrong because this is all us trying to predict the future. So when we come back, I appreciate it when people remember when I'm right instead of just when I'm wrong. So I do appreciate that. But I'll be the first one to say, man, I missed on this guy. If Justin Fields doesn't become a good starting quarterback in the NFL, I'll be the first one to say it. I expect him to be. And if I'm wrong, then I miss. It's going to happen. I'm not going to be the last one to miss. I promise you that. Just won't cost me a couple $1 million to miss.
It's a little easier for us to shoot shots like Kobe out here because we're not going to get fired for having wrong take. Mel Kiper, man, what a great gig. Good for him, the Godfather. I mean, we wouldn't be here without him, so I can't talk any crap because, yeah, God bless. We got Victor is goated coming in here with a cute pic with his little kid there. How you doing, Victor? Good morning to you. I heard the Texans are going to move Deshaun Watson. Should we? I'm assuming he means trade for Deshaun Watson. I'm going to take this real quick until this stuff is cleared behind him. I would think he is radioactive, not just to the Broncos, but to all teams. He's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL in my book. He's also only 24 years old. And before this all came out, I mean, I would have given up 3 first-round picks and not even blinked because you're talking about a quarterback that could be with you for the next 10 to 15 years. He's still that young. And think about like, oh, man, Broncos shouldn't give up that much. They're going to, forfeit all their drafts. 10 to 15 years, guys. You know how far back 10 to 15 years is for the Broncos? Guess who the quarterback was 15 years ago for the Broncos? Jake Plummer. Think about how much football has happened from the time that we've seen Jake Plummer play to now. Just incredible. So if you could have a stud quarterback for that long, you take it every day of the week. Draft picks be damned, especially because those picks are probably going to be late. So right now he's radioactive. That's just talking about the on-field product. But I mean, if this stuff comes out clear, and who knows, I'm not going to speculate on that. But we might be having this conversation 6 months from now, a year from now. But I think right now he might not even be eligible to play this year. He might be on the commissioner's exempt list.
Oh, and having a quarterback like that, it helps you in free agency too. So you don't have to depend so much on the draft. When you've got a Pied Piper like that, people want to come play with him because they know that he's gonna help them compete for championships. So if you're the 49ers and you could send that package to Denver for Deshaun Watson, that's easy. That was an easy thing to make. Now you're hoping, now you're guessing, hoping, counting on an untested rookie to become that guy. But Deshaun Watson is an elite quarterback at a very young age and has done it under trying circumstances on a bad team. That he's absolutely worth all of that. But to just say what Nick was saying, it's like, you can't do it now. You can't do it right now. No way. Not in this day and age. No way. Not for what he's under investigation for. Nope. No way.
It's just the volume is too much. With the 26 people, it's like we have to see how this turns out. And it doesn't, obviously innocent until proven guilty, but just got to put a pause on that one. Not pause on this guy though. Malcolm Brown coming in. Thanks for having a morning show. Thank you for joining us, Malcolm. I hope you guys are enjoying that. We see the supers. We're feeling the love right now, so that is super helpful. And Scott, I know it's absolutely. Gosh, no Deshaun Watson comment on that one. But I went there. The coffee is still kicking in. I'm curious about. So we obviously know that the draft itself, we've mentioned it a few times, it is a luck process, and there are 5 quarterbacks right now that George Paton said he expects 5 quarterbacks to go in the top 10. That's his expectation. Mm-hmm. We know based on reality that at least 2 of these guys are going to be busts. Maybe 2 of them become studs, 1 of them becomes a solid quarterback, and then 2 become outright busts. I'm going to put you on the spot right now, Scott. Categorize those guys. Who are the 2 studs? Who ends up becoming the okay starter? And who are the busts?
The two guys I think that are the most sure thing are Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, 1 and 2. Okay, the 2 busts are the guys that have the least amount of experience and the most raw talent. Trey Lance and Zach Wilson. The guy who has a chance to be a good pro for a long time, Mac Jones. So that's how I do it. So you've got elite ball skills with production. And this is how you end up putting your order together. If you're just talking about what you see on the field, is you've got talent, you've got production. Where do those lines cross? And on a diagram that Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence tick both boxes with the competition and the defenses they faced. Where Zach Wilson and Trey Lance, they don't. They haven't played in that same type of stuff. We're talking about potential there more than production, but there is a lot of production. And then you're talking about a guy who doesn't necessarily have all the tools with the big arm. He's not a runner, but he's got massive production in Mac Jones. So that's where I'd go with that. And depending on where I am and depending on where I get them, it depends on where I take them too. Trey Lance for me would be the scariest pick of the bunch, just because he's been playing at a lower level and hasn't played a ton. There's the least amount to go on there, and the less information you have, the scarier the pick is.
The wider variance. Yep, for sure. I'm just gonna switch it up here, and obviously have to preface this: landing spot is half the battle. Like, would Patrick Mahomes be Patrick Mahomes if he ended up on who's just a trash heap organization? The Texans. I guess they took Watson in that same Jets. Yeah, would he be that same guy if he was on the Jets?
Bengals,
probably not.
The Bengals are better, but they're consistently mediocre. When we talked about AJ Green and Julio Jones, swap those two out, and you might be talking about who the better player was. So it depends on where you're going and the ambition of the ownership. We're talking about trades and stuff and draft picks, like, oh, that trade didn't work out. It's like, well, trade those picks to the Packers or the Steelers or the Patriots, and let's see what they do with them instead of the Browns. It matters.
Yeah, and speaking of mattering, Stephen Baumgartner coming in here from Nebraska. I always say I'm not going to give you a hard time about Nebraska when you're coming in and dropping a super, showing us the love. So we appreciate that. No, Drew Lock is my quarterback. Maybe Steven's tune is changing. Gonna have to let us know, Steven. Is Drew Lock not your guy anymore? Are we convincing you? But thank you so much. Hey guys, hey, back to you, Steven. Hope you're doing well. We got a question here from our own Kenny Booker. I wanted to address this one real quick. If Fields or Lance falls to 9, could we trade that pick and a third for Watson? Has his value fallen that much? Two things here. One, I don't think teams are going to trade for him, but also I don't know if the Texans are going to trade him right now either, right? Like, his value is so low. Like, if somebody be like, oh, we're going to give you a 7, he might not even play again. But what if he's cleared and you get back that 3 first again? So he's on ice. I mean, I think the Texans have him on ice. Teams have him on ice. The NFL might put him on ice here pretty soon. I think we're just going to have to put that one in a box. I'll let Steven come in and say, Drew Lock is still in my QB with the double exclamation points. That's important because I know you always do that one. So appreciate that.
I'm sorry, that one left. Was it Henry who asked that question about
Kenny.
The last one? So I wanted to say Kenny Booker. For me, his value is either still sky high or it's 0. There is no in between. So no, that's not enough, because if he is on the block, that's not going to be enough to get him. And if it is enough to get him, he's not on the block. So it's either going to be the 3 first-round types, or he's cut outright and you pick him up as a free agent and you have to take the PR hit for it. So which will happen. If it we've seen guys come back from worse than this with billions of dollars on the line. But again, we don't know where he comes out of this. So if he's cleared of all this, you're not going to get him for that little. And if he's not cleared of all this, you're not going to get him, period.
Yeah, and here's a good question coming in here from Tyler. Thank you very much over on YouTube. Tyler says, where would Burrow, Herbert, and Kyler rank if they were in this draft? And let's throw in Tua Tagovailoa as well, just so we can get the top 3 first-round picks from last year, as well as the number 1 overall pick in 2019. So how would you rank those guys?
Tyler, that's a great question. Trevor Lawrence is number 1. That's the easiest one for me. He's the best quarterback prospect come out in several years. After that, it starts getting a little hairy. To me, then you're deciding between Joe Burrow and Justin Fields. Herbert, I still think I would probably move down a little bit farther. And Kyler has the question marks of the size. When you're drafting a quarterback that's under 6 feet tall, that's scary. I mean, it is. It's just flat out scary. I would still probably have Trey Lance last in this group. I would probably have Mac Jones in front of him. So these 3 guys, I would probably put in between. Oh, I'd have to write it down so I don't get too confused.
Yeah, right.
But off the napkin here, I'd still go Lawrence, Fields, Burrow. That's close. Wilson, Herbert are in that group, and then Kyler somewhere. I'd have to write it down. But for me, Trevor Lawrence is number 1. Burrow, Fields are the next 2.
Yeah. What about Tua Tagovailoa?
He's down there with Trey Lance, I think. Just he's got more production, but he's so much more raw as a football player that he's what you would have had if Zach Wilson or Trey Lance played at Alabama. Raw, but lots of production with better teams and better competition, and you would have seen it. But he's not as refined a thrower as some of these other guys we're talking about.
Yeah, it's a good point. And we got Cam Wirtz coming in here. Which veteran quarterback could the Broncos pick up for good competition for Locke? And I'll throw 3 names out there. Actually, 4 names out there. You can give me. We're doing a lot of rankings today. It's fun. Quarterback rankings too. You got Jimmy Garoppolo, who's an option for the Broncos. He's out there. Gardner Minshew has been linked to them. Nick Foles has been linked to them, and Teddy Bridgewater. So as far as bringing in a veteran quarterback option, what would you say? What would you rank these guys, and who would you offer as the best fit?
Fit is tough. I love Teddy Bridgewater, but he hasn't been the same guy since he got hurt, just flat out. I mean, I'm a huge fan of him and have been for, since he was a sophomore in high school, but he hasn't been the same guy. That I'd probably go Jimmy G, Garoppolo as the top guy, as the most proven out of that bunch. That if I had a guy to bring in and could be a starter, could be a backup, that if he was available. Now, if I'm the 49ers, I don't make him available this year. I hold on to him for 1 more year as an insurance policy. And so I don't have to throw my rookie quarterback to the wolves and make him available the next year. Contracts, I haven't looked at his contract. I'm just saying this from a talent and smarts standpoint. I wouldn't make him available this year. But I would want Garoppolo first out of that bunch.
Did you see Kyle Shanahan's comments about Garoppolo? My God, talk about a nihilist trip. He's like, can you guarantee if Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be on this roster come Thursday? And he's like, I can't guarantee if a single human on planet Earth is going to be alive come Thursday. It's like, oh my God, Kyle.
Yeah. I would have not gone that. I was like, I can't guarantee I'm going to be the coach in August. That's where I have gone. I would have gone with that, but good for him.
Yeah, it reminded me of Andrew Whitworth after the Rams lost the Super Bowl. It's like, how do you feel? It's like, well, it stinks to lose this game, but in the end, we're all going to die. And it's like, oh my God, like we'd use this to escape nihilistic dread, like the impending doom of death. Like, what are you doing, Andrew Whitworth? Don't be that self-aware.
Nobody gets out alive. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. I'm going to go listen.
I'm going to go cry
or something.
All right, guys. Well, speaking of listening, thank you guys so much for joining us today. We're going to be here again tomorrow at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, God's time, 7 a.m. for me. So I didn't finish my coffee today, but that's okay, as we had too much fun stuff to talk about. If you guys have anything, go Chelsea. Yeah, exactly. And tuning in for PSG versus
Man City today. Yep, first leg. So they're the Champions League is actually on CBS Sports Network today, so you don't have to pay for it or watch it in Spanish, which I don't mind. But how they set this up is 2 games, you add up the score, and the winner wins. So this is the first half. So it's 3 hours of soccer. This is the first game. Next week's the second game. Add up the scores. Whoever's ahead after 2 games wins. It's a fun format.
It is a fun format. I sometimes wish they would do something similar in football, just so both teams had a home field advantage, although it's hard to play that many football games.
Well, it's why you'll never hear. I remember when the U.S. basketball, when they played in London in the Olympics, and they beat somebody like 90-5. It was crazy. It was a crazy blowout score, and the only people complaining about it were Americans. The only people complaining about it. Anybody else they ask, like, what do you think? They will never complain about running up the score because they're used to aggregate score lines. So you get as many points as you can in the first game. Yep. They're used to adding that stuff up. So, us Americans are like, well, we're bullies and everybody hates us. Like, dude, go out and play the game.
If you don't like getting scored on,
play better defense.
God bless. So I also want to thank all the supers that came in today. Chris P, I know he's gone, but listening back, hopefully you'll get a chance to hear the shout out. We got Victor's the Goated also came in today. Malcolm Brown and our friend Stephen Baumgartner out in Nebraska. So we appreciate you guys. Again, you're keeping the lights on. We are testing the waters on the morning show here. Chad wants to see if there is some viability to having the morning show. So every single super helps sway Chad in that department to keep this morning content coming, because it's got to be worth it for his time. He's a busy man. He's expecting again. Chad he's been a busy man, and now he's going to be even more busy. So we appreciate that.
And Steve, if you didn't hear me, because you have to deal with Nick giving you Nebraska hell. Yeah, I said that Tommy Frazier is one of the best quarterbacks of all time, one of the best college football players of all time. So I hope you heard that, because I firmly believe that 95 Nebraska team is still my benchmark for the number one team that I've seen. They were crazy good.
Oh man, I will never forget Nebraska coming to Iowa, and some of their fans were not the nicest. Granted, that's true for every single fan base. And if you run into the wrong person or somebody drunk at the wrong time, then that'll happen. But I've probably been that annoying guy too. I do it every single morning on these shows with you, Scott. But thank you guys so much for joining us for Broncos for Breakfast. We appreciate the heck out of you. We will be here again tomorrow morning, the day of the draft. Oh my God, it's so freaking close. I can almost taste it. We'll be here again at 8 o'clock Mountain Time. We appreciate everybody for joining us today. It's so helpful. It's been a lot of fun doing these shows with you, Scott. We'll see what happens after the draft with that. Make sure you guys subscribe, like, and share if you are joining us on YouTube. That's the most important thing you can do to help us. Super chats are very helpful, but if you can get more eyeballs on these shows as well by going to the YouTube page, subscribing, liking, and sharing the shows, my God, that would beyond helpful. We appreciate that a lot. Also, if you're joining us on Facebook, see we still got a good number of people in here. Click those thumbs up, click those heart reacts. I mean, that helps us a heck of a lot as well. Guys, also, I'm going to drop it in the comment section here for you guys listening. But make sure you go check out Scott's show Scott's YouTube page. I dropped it in the comments here, and I'll put the banner up as well for youtube.com/C/Scott Kennedy. Scott, what's the latest thing up there?
Well, I'm going to tell you what the latest thing. It's going to be Kenny coming over to my page and asking that question about Justice League and Mortal Kombat. So I haven't watched Mortal Kombat yet. I got plenty of thoughts on Justice League. I did some research on Mortal Kombat through some of my dad friends, and they weren't impressed. But I'd be happy to talk Justice League. Go post a question on my YouTube page. I answer all of them, and a lot of you have. I've picked up probably 30, 40 new followers on YouTube in the last week, and you can attest if you're in here and you're doing that and you've asked a question, I'm going to answer it. I promise you.
Yeah. Yep. And shout out to all the Europe peeps and non-USA peeps joining us for the American football shows. Morning shows are a bit easier to watch over here in Europe. Yeah, I talked with Chad about that the other day. It's really fun to see everybody where they're coming in. As Chad likes to say, Broncos country is not a place. It is a state of being. So appreciate everybody over there and across the pond joining us today. We're going to get out of here. Tomorrow's draft day. We've almost done it. If you guys have any, Kenny, we put up the YouTube page. It's this one right here. It might
not have gone. Oh yeah, there it did go. I was like, it might not have gone to the Facebook page, but you can just go to /C/Scott Kennedy.
Exactly.
And pick one out. You can go into the discussion part, or you can go to let's see, who would be the closest to a Superman? Spencer Brown. Go find Spencer Brown and go comment on him, and I'll make a nice comparison to Spencer Brown and Superman.
Yeah. Also, want to give a shout out to John working the ones and twos in the background. This show is so much easier and helpful when John is there, although he took his camera off, so I can't see his beautiful smiling face, like laughing at me and making silly faces. There he flashed there. But appreciate John very much. You guys make sure you go follow him on Twitter as well, at JohnKMHH, because I can't express enough how much easier these shows are and how much better they flow when John is there to be helpful. So that way we can focus on the conversation, and John can dial us up, put it on a tee for us with the comments. So
someone has to make us look like we know what we're doing. Somebody
at least got the guy in the ear.
Try. There's only so much you can do, but thank you.
So thanks, John. Got the shout out there. Love y'all. Stay safe. We'll see you tomorrow again at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, day of the draft. Oh man, we're there. Everyone stay safe. Love y'all. God bless, and go Broncos.